gentlemen, welcome to Retro Wars, episode 259. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
First up, we do have a little bit of housekeeping. As always, check the timestamps in the episode description if you want to jump straight to the topic at hand this week. And we are going to have our producer, Guy, on after the ending theme. So please do stay tuned for that. Because Guy's here, and he's going to talk to us about... I don't ever know. We never vet his segment.
No, we just let it roll.
Yeah, basically. And I just, in my head, every time I introduce the segment, I'm like, I hope that it's not something bad. I don't know why I worry that he would.
Right.
He always brings fun things.
Yeah.
My week, I've been doing Game Boy stuff.
Yeah.
Just generic
Game Boy
in general Game Boy stuff. For whatever reason, I decided I wanted to get my Game Boy Micro back up to snuff.
Right.
I have one of the Famicom Micros, and the faceplate was damaged long ago.
Right. Yeah,
I bought
hearing that right around the time that I met you, I believe.
Yep. And what happened was I was still living with my mom, and she had gone into my room and like swept all the stuff off of the top of my dresser into the top drawer of my dresser. And the Game Boy Micro slammed into a... if you pre-ordered the game Prey, the original game Prey, in like 2008 or whatever it was, it came with a pewter miniature figure of a monster from the game Prey.
Huh.
And it scratched the screen of my Game Boy Micro.
That sucks.
And so I bought a Repro Famicom cover, but it's not like... shiny and gold, so it looks wrong and it bothers me. So I bought another Repro cover that's just red, so the whole thing's red now.
Nice.
And I put a new knockoff battery in it, so it works great. And then right after doing that, I was like, well, I also want a bigger Game Boy. That's not my DS Lite for no reason. I don't know why. And so I've ordered an AGS 101, one of the improved backlight. SPs, yeah. And in preparation for that, I'm like, all right, let me dig out my charger and see what all GBA games and accessories I have. And so I'm playing on my AGS 001 model because, of course, I have more Game Boys than most of Texas.
Right.
So I'm playing on that like in anticipation of this new Game Boy I have coming. I've been playing with my Radica Gamester that you gave me like 4 years ago.
Right.
Because I don't love the grip on the SP.
Yeah.
I vastly prefer the ergonomics of the original model GBA, but I really like the buttons and D-pad on the SP because they're very clicky.
Right.
And the original model GBA, for people that haven't played one in a while, because you can't see them no matter what,
right.
And honestly, in retrospect, it's kind of unfathomably stupid that they released that unbacklit at all.
Yeah.
The buttons and D-pad are really squishy. I feel like the D-pad is also smaller.
I believe so.
But I might just be... I feel like it feels like GameCube-sized
That's
D-pad.
what I always thought it was. I always thought it was the same size as the GameCube. You know, when you brought up the dumb Radica Gamester in the Discord earlier, I was trying to remember where I even got it back in the day.
Yeah, it is a weird accessory.
Yeah, for the life of me, I can't remember. It had to have been traded in by somebody at EB when I was working there. And I was just like, oh, I guess I need to have this now. It was either that or I got it on clearance somewhere, one or the other.
For people at home, it is a Game Boy Advance SP platform that you lock onto the cartridge slot of your SP, and it lets you put in 3 GBA games, and you have a little toggle switch to switch between them.
Right.
But I mostly use it just because it gives it this big, beefy, rubberized grip.
Right.
And I like that. It's a good.
Also, you don't have to trade your cartridges out as often.
There you go.
For some reason.
So I've got that coming in the mail. I've also, of course, going down the GBA rabbit hole, I end up down the GameCube rabbit hole because I want to play my GBA. System. Yeah, I want to play my GBA on the TV, so I set my GameCube up, but my S-Video cables are like literally falling apart. They've barely been used. There's so many junky S-Video cables for multi-port NES or Nintendo consoles out there.
Right.
And mine are junk and falling apart. So then I'm looking at like, well, I could get one of the HDMI thingies for my GameCube, and those are expensive. And for whatever reason, I'm like fighting tooth and nail to play Game Boy games on my TV,
Right.
specifically with my Game Boy player on my GameCube.
Right.
For no reason. One, the Game Boy player is allegedly a bad experience.
I always liked it.
And two, I have a Retron 5. I can just plug that up to my TV and do. So I did that, and then I'm going down the rabbit hole of getting a wireless 8-bit Do controller synced with it.
Right.
And so at this
which
point,
one are you thinking about getting? Which 8-bit Do controller?
Well, I have an SN30, one of the original SN30s.
So
and it'll sync with it, but the button mapping is all weird in the menus. And so that drives me insane. So I was like, well, I'll get one of the SNES 8-bit Do wireless controller adapters and just plug that in, and it'll act just like a Super Nintendo controller. Right. And at this point, I have so to recap, at this point, I've updated my Game Boy Micro, ordered a Game Boy Advance SP that's coming in the mail.
Yeah.
I've hooked up my Retron 5. I've fully got my modded Wii up to date, running GameCube games off of my SD card with broadband adapter support.
Yeah.
And now I'm fighting with getting my 8-bit Do controller properly mapped on the menus of my Retron 5, all because I wanted to play Game Boy Advance.
Now, here's the important question. What game did you want to play?
Oh, nothing. None. 0 games. I'm playing none of them. I just am obsessed with having the ability. I don't know why.
Yeah.
To be fair, I have been playing a little bit of Dawn of Souls.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to figure out where the hell I was in Circle of the Moon, because God, I cannot.
I've never gotten into that game. Like I've played it, I finished it, and I still didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. People are going to hate me for this, but this is why I don't really love Metroidvania-style games, is because I have this very bad habit of, I beat a boss or whatever, and then I wander back to a zone that I've already been to get something.
Right.
And then I wander back maybe one more zone, and then I quit playing for a month, and then I come back to the game. I don't know what boss I've beaten last. I don't know where I am. I'm in the wrong part of the castle. I don't know where I'm supposed to go, and I'm just running back and forth between the same corridors, not realizing that I have like a double jump.
Right.
And then I realize it 20 minutes in, and I have to go back through all the areas I've been in, because I'm like, oh, I could have gone to that place. But then it turns out it wasn't where I was supposed to go at all.
So what you're saying is it's because you're bad at them.
Yes. No, tremendously so. But I did get my Wii hook, so I'm getting rid of my PVM. And I know people will be saddened to hear that, but it just didn't get it didn't get played. It doesn't get touched. It's a wonderful machine. It's great. It looks awesome, but it just doesn't get used. So my Wii, which was a permanent fixture on my PVM, I took it off and I was like, well, I'll put it on my living room HD TV. It's a component.
Yeah.
And I just forgot how darn good GameCube games look over a component. It looks great.
Yeah, they look fine.
And even coming from Dolphin, where I'm playing everything at like 1080p up-res resolution, I'm like, this still looks great. Like, it's granted I'm 15 feet away, so whatever, but anyway, so that's been my week of weird obsessiveness for no reason. I have the ability to do all of these things I'm trying to do. I just want to do them in this one specific way.
And the best part is, because you're setting up your Wii and GameCube so that you can play your Wii and GameCube games in a nice native environment there. You just recently mentioned how great they all look on Dolphin, which you have streaming to every television in your home.
This is true. Yeah, this is true.
So, that's good too.
Again, it's not that I can't do any of these things.
Right.
And it's not that I'm doing them and going, man, this would be better if it was this way, because this is inconvenient. It's that I want to do them in a specific, but also technically inferior way for just no reason.
Yeah.
I'm bored. I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I have many times like hovered over the button to buy a Mother 3 Game Boy Micro, to the point to where I actually had one shipping to me at one point, and it got lost and I got a refund.
Oh no.
But many times I've almost bought it just to realize I'm just gonna play these on an emulator or on my GameCube. What am I doing?
I will say this. I did learn, and when you say Mother 3 Micro, I don't know if you're talking about a repro one that has a reproduction shell to look like that, or the original.
No, the original one.
Okay, because I was going to say what I've learned about the micros is that due to the manufacturing process of how the reproduction faceplates are made, they all come just a little bit scuffed. And there's nothing you can do about it, and it's just how these repro faceplates are made.
Well, that's all right, because the official Mother 3 Game Boy Micro goes for about $600 now.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a little high. That's more than I paid for some of my cars. So,
yeah.
But man, the micro it's great. I like it a lot. I've been keeping it in my pocket and playing it, and it's been good.
Nice.
It's got a little. I think it has a lanyard spot. Maybe I can attach one of my Digimon to it. That sounds like the perfect.
That'll really sell it.
Oh yeah. Then I'll really spend a lot of time on it. Anyway, that's the weird shit I've been up to.
Just have one useless piece of electronics chained to another useless piece of electronics.
You know what it was? You know what spawned all of this? I boxed up my PS4. I boxed up all of last gen and the generation of consoles before. So I boxed up my PS4, my Xbox One, my 360, my PS3, and my Wii. I boxed them all up because I was like, these just don't get touched. And then all of a sudden,
unpacked your Wii.
Immediately, I had all of these empty ports on my TV and plugs and space, and everything looked clean. And I was like, oh man, I want to get like my Wii out. And just the next day, like, cut the tape on it, and I was like, come on, Wii, let's go play. And then, and to be fair, the Wii is a great, like, all-in-one device to have hooked up to your TV. Like, it's got your GameCube games, you got your Wii games, you got the virtual console. It's just, and it's wireless controllers, and you plug in all your classic controllers. It's great.
Yeah.
We did a whole episode on it, but I still maintain that a hacked Wii is one of the better and most notably cheaper solutions out there if you're looking to just play a shitload of games with a lot of controller options.
Right. And I would add that a hacked Wii U is potentially, depending on your setup, even better.
True.
Because
although more expensive by a wide margin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely more expensive. But it does give you the option of Wii U games as well, and different controller options as well.
True.
I don't know if
aren't Wii's still like in the $30 range?
I think they're getting closer to 50-ish now.
Oh no, they're creeping up.
Yeah, not by much though.
I feel like in 20 years, Wii's are going to be like very sought. Anything that's really super popular to the point that people don't value it seems to suddenly be very expensive later on because it's impossible to find ones in good condition.
Yeah, I think that's already the issue now is that people are losing the GameCube port covers. They're scuffing up the systems. All the original white Wiis all look like they lived with smokers for 30 years already.
I will say I've kept GameCube peripherals plugged into my Wii for so long that when I was boxing it up, I went to put the thing back on, the GameCube covers. Yeah. And one of mine had been in a box for so many years now that it had gotten broken, so I ordered replacements for like $7. Yeah. The replacements are like literally a millimeter wider than the originals. And I'm like, I'm not going to use them. Like, I don't know why. They look fine. Yeah. But I'm like, no. I'll have to buy a broken Wii and harvest the door off the top.
And then resell it with some aftermarket doors.
There you go.
Perfect.
Anyway.
Yeah. So that's your list of obsessions for the week?
Yeah, that's the weird shit I've been into this week.
I've had so little time to do anything just because I've been working so much. I don't know what happened. Our office is still mostly closed down, and, society is still mostly closed down. And over the last 2 weeks, it's gotten...
Especially around here, it's closing down more.
Yeah, it's reclosing. But my office has just been super busy the last couple of weeks. Like, we've got all these new projects starting and new customers coming in and shit. So I've had to be working a lot of overtime. However, I did finish Cold Steel 3, which ends on the shittiest cliffhanger.
At how many hours?
Well, that's hard for me to judge. Like, I'll always say what the timer on the game says, but I also have this really bad habit of opening a menu screen, roaming off to make dinner, and then I start
Well,
doing
Saturn-
laundry and all this shit, and I realize that I've been letting my PS4 sit there for 3 hours.
Let me say this.
Uh-huh.
If you let a 700-hour JRPG run for 12 extra hours, does it really make a difference?
I think my total game time ended up clocking in at about 75 hours. But
that's not bad.
but
I was expecting triple digits for sure.
No, it actually, like, I kept reading that it's the longest in the series and all this shit, but I also had fast forward mode on the entire game, which was great.
There you go.
So, but that was really good. That cliffhanger at the end is fucking killing me because 4 doesn't come out in English until October, and now I just have to stare at the case for 3 for the next 4 months.
Just in your head, imagine the goofiest anime trope, and that'll be what it is.
Yeah, right. That was it got super dark. Like
did it?
This was probably
I know I make fun of it, but every time you talk, like I'm vicariously playing JRPGs through you because I am interested when you talk about it. And every time after we talk about it on the show, I go on Steam and I'm like, no, but
no, you would hate.
But
it.
I think about
the whole
it.
Series. This is not for you.
Yeah.
But no. Like the first half of the game was fairly upbeat, but had some serious military overtones. Like you could tell that shit was going to eventually happen. But then when shit finally happened, it had nothing to do with any of those military overtones. It just got really fucking dark all of a sudden. It was just they tricked me. But no, it was really good. I am looking forward for the next one, but I've not had a chance to start anything since then. So I have played nothing in the last week and a half.
Yeah, I'm still in that weird in between zone where I'm like, I have so much stuff to play that I'm playing nothing and twiddling my thumbs and finding weird obsessions.
Yeah.
You know, when you get in that between zone,
right? I was happy that I finished the game before that New Game Plus Expo the other day, because the trailer they showed for Cold Steel 4 just straight up fucking spoiled the last 3 hours of the game.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, that was nice of them.
Let's knock out some news.
Yep.
First up, Persona 4 Golden, released on Steam, becomes the fastest-selling and most concurrently played JRPG on the entire platform, which basically means on all of PC gaming because
essentially,
it's Steam.
Right.
Yeah. So good on them, and it's only $20. Is that right?
So it's either 20 or 30. Let me double check real quick. But
it's affordable is what I'm getting at. So good on them.
Yeah.
KFC is not releasing a new gaming console called the KF console. I know. I'm shocked as well.
What's even the point of life anymore?
I was just hoping for a KFC classic that I could add to my classic console, my minis.
No, what had happened was they put out, I think it was a picture on Twitter or Facebook or some shit, where they were, mocking the reveal videos of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. And they showed this goofy black monolithic console thing that was in the shape of a KFC bucket. And it said KF console on the side.
And if they did a small run and they were just like regular decent computers for like $500 and they did maybe 1,000 of them, they'd sell out.
Oh, yeah.
Like instantly.
It had a little logo on it that kind of looked like the Monster Energy drink logo that really sold it as a legit game console. But yeah, it suddenly several news sites were like, is this just a joke? Like, of course it's a fucking joke. What are you people doing? How are you people employed?
Well, this is also just 2 weeks after everyone's like, Sega's making a new home console. People are just ready. It's that weird phase where there's new hardware coming, and everyone's like, oh, what if someone else jumps in the game? And it's like, that doesn't happen anymore. That hasn't happened this millennium. That's just not how it works anymore.
Well, what if Atari comes back?
And the ones that did ended up being the Ouya.
Right.
So we don't talk about it.
No.
Intrepid programmers create actual game of Lee Carvalho's putting challenge.
You've selected Power Drive,
which is from The Simpsons.
Yes.
The Bone Storm episode.
Which was almost 30 years ago.
Oh my, holy shit. Shut up. I'm going to go throw up for an hour.
Yeah.
Gearbox Software sues 3D Realms for breach of contract regarding Duke Nukem license.
Yeah. So apparently when they bought the Duke Nukem license from 3D Realms, they were told that it was going to be this free and clear purchase. They would own the entire franchise, all the games, all the rights. Everything would be completely covered. And then as soon as they re-released Duke Nukem 3D, the composer of it successfully sued them over the soundtrack. So
of course.
Yeah, so it was not as free and clear as they thought. But despite that, they did announce that they are releasing Duke Nukem 3D on Switch this month.
Thanks, game industry. Nintendo launched a free jump rope game and are really, really promoting it.
Yeah.
They really want you to play this fucking jump rope game.
Well,
so do that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're stuck in your house anyway, I guess so. Go ahead.
You can jump rope in your house. I have a jump rope.
What?
It's fun. It's good. What? You don't have a jump rope?
No.
It's good exercise.
Did you steal it from an elementary school?
No, they sell adult jump rope,
I don't
Saturn.
believe you. I think they're just mass-produced for elementary schools, and then no one sees them ever again.
It just happens to be pink and have little tassels on the end, okay? It's just what they look like.
It's also designed for someone who's 3 feet tall. It's fine.
No, all right, never mind. PS5 special editions will be, quote, beyond anything seen before, says Sony marketing with nothing to back them up. So I'm guessing they're just going to put like a shitty vinyl decal on them and call it a special edition. Maybe do it a new color.
They're gonna make them shaped like trash cans.
You know what they need to do is team up with Belkin and make a router version of the PS5 because it already looks like a router.
All-in-one. That'd be amazing.
It would be perfect.
Or they team up with Nabisco and make double stuffed PS5 that's just twice the width.
Perfect. For no reason,
Right.
just empty space. You know, the way they used to make video game consoles with tons of empty space.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
CD Projekt Red gave away DRM-free copies of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on GOG to anyone who owned the PlayStation, Xbox, or Steam copies. The deal is now expired, but, good on them.
Yeah,
that was cool.
very nice.
If you linked up your GOG Galaxy through those respective services,
Right.
It would add it to your account.
Yeah.
Also, CD Projekt Red announces delay of Cyberpunk 2077 until November 19th from, what they had it in August or September?
That sounds right. I think it was September.
Something like that. So a couple months delay. So
Yeah.
that sucks, but is what it is.
Yeah, I like when they finally revealed the Stadia release date of the game as November. All the Stadia people were super butthurt. They were like, "What do you mean it's going to come out after on the other systems? I'm not even going to play it anymore. This is a waste. This is a joke of a game. Nobody wants this." Then they announced the delay on all the other platforms so that it would be similar to the Stadia release. And they were like, "Oh, they do like us after all." And then they announced the delay of the Stadia version 2.
I like that anybody. First of all, I like that there is a Stadia community
so
and that you
great.
keep tabs on it.
Oh, it's
Second of all, I like that they think anyone even remembers Stadia.
It's become one of my favorite it's like owning sea monkeys. You just like look in the tank every now and then and you're like, what are they doing today? And that's how I feel with the Stadia community. Like, I still technically have a Stadia controller and the free account doesn't go away, so I have that too. But I'm not going to play it because why would I? But I still like to observe them and see what great injustices they're battling in the world today.
PAX hosting online trade show for 9 days in September.
Nice.
So that's weird.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they're doing that because probably regular PAX is canceled.
Yes. PAX West, I think they said, was canceled. So they're doing this instead, and they are not charging admission like they would for regular PAX since they're not having to rent an actual arena or anything.
But in my head, PAX has always been a community event. Why are they doing... Like, it just seems weird to me.
I think they're just giving all of the people who would normally present at PAX just a
I guess
platform.
I forget that they have presenters at PAX, that it is kind of trade showy. Because in my head, it's like, it's what it was 15 years ago in my head, and it's not anymore.
Right. Well, I presume also the smaller independent artists and stuff like that will also get some kind of platform out of this in order to...
That's true. In some ways, it could be better for them even because it might kind of level the playing field of not having to compete on, booth space and stuff.
Exactly.
New Pokemon Snap announced alongside Pokemon Sword and Shield DLC, as well as a Pokemon MOBA from Tencent announced the following week. Pokemon MOBA from Tencent. 2020, what else are you going to do to us?
we had bushfires, we had coronavirus, and now we've got a fucking 10-cent MOBA about Pokemon. What the fuck?
What weird? It's just like they took video. It's like someone threw darts at a video game vocabulary board. Pokemon MOBA from Tencent. All right.
Yeah, it's just
Steam release of RetroArch will support 10 cores at launch. They are Mupen 64, Chronos, which is Saturn, PCSX, Stella, which is Atari 2600, Same Boy, which is Game Boy and Game Boy Color, MGBA, Messen, which is NES, Messen S, which is SNES, Genesis Plus GX, and Final Burn Neo. Cores will not be downloadable via RetroArch, but available as free DLC via Steam. And RetroArch and Cores will not feature an auto-updater, but will instead update via Steam updates, thus creating such a complicated situation that I don't know why you wouldn't just go download RetroArch off the damn website.
I'm guessing they did this for people who are overwhelmed by RetroArch as it is. And they just want,
although to be fair, the new
PC
interface
release.
makes it so much simpler.
Actually, I tried the new interface and I do not like it at all.
Really?
I
prefer
I would
vastly.
rather put up with their shitty cross media bar interface than the new one. I just don't. It doesn't work for me. Also, the
Granted,
fact that
I
I
don't-
can't use my controller to control it is a little frustrating.
You can. I do.
Oh, really? It didn't want to work with mine.
I don't know. Maybe it's because you're complaining about it and it hurts you.
I'll give it another shot.
You mute your microphone so I can't hear you bitching.
Never.
Bots have taken over WoW Classic, just as everyone expected.
Yeah. Big surprise.
I can't say I'm shocked there. And then finally, we have Billy Mitchell Watch.
Billy Mitchell Watch.
Billy Mitchell Watch. It's been a long time since we've talked about our good friend and hated enemy, Billy Mitchell. He has had his records reinstated at the Guinness World Records, once again showing that there is no more trustworthy source for international record keeping than a beer company, which is a good point.
Yeah.
Because first of all, everyone was very upset about it to begin with. And I will say this, because I'm not an arrogant, bad sport like Billy Mitchell is. If the records that were in the book were legitimately obtained, then they should go in the record book. That does not mean that he's not a cheater and that he did not cheat at some other point.
Oh, yeah.
But these are not Twin Galaxy scores.
No.
And as much as Guinness Book of World Records is significantly more famous as far as world records go, in the video game space, Twin Galaxies is still kind of the de facto, video game world record holder place. And I don't believe they've reinstated anything.
Yeah.
A lot of people,
they have not touched any of it.
A lot of people were upset because Guinness said they did an investigation.
Right.
And they've released no details of the investigation. And I will say, Billy's cheating, I'll say alleged. I shouldn't, and he doesn't deserve it, and it's not alleged.
Right.
But Billy's alleged cheating was of a very technical nature. It was not that he straight up was playing a fake Donkey Kong ROM on an Android phone and saying that was his score.
Right.
Allegedly, he was playing a version of Donkey Kong, which was, I believe, potentially on original hardware that had been altered in some way to change the RNG in his favor.
So essentially using a Game Genie.
Kinda, but like a hard-coded Game Genie. And that was the allegation that I remember, but it's been a long time since I've even thought about Billy Mitchell, because why would I want to? And so cheating of that technical of a nature is difficult for a beer company to properly assess, I imagine.
I did make the beer company joke in the notes. I don't think that Guinness owns the Guinness World Records anymore. I think they sold it at one point.
Oh, really? Because I know it was started by them.
Yes. I believe it is currently owned by Ripley's Believe It or Not.
That's not shocking. That, for some reason, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And without further ado, let's get into the topic at hand.
Yes.
This week we're talking Tactics Ogre. Let us cling together.
Oh, the show's over.
Everyone just stopped listening out of habit. Yes, it is the game from which we have at some point stolen our sign off, and I don't remember how or why because we've never covered the game.
Right. Well, we're doing this because this is this episode and the next episode are essentially our 5-year anniversary.
They are.
And since we mention part of the title of this game every episode, it only made sense that eventually we should actually discuss the game it came from.
True. It's just odd to me that we haven't covered the game before, and somehow how would this even become our sign off? Like in my head, I'm trying to remember because I haven't listened to it. I'm trying to remember how.
Here's my best recollection of what happened.
Okay.
One of us mentioned the game. I think you were replaying it on PSP or considering playing it on PSP or something.
Yeah.
And Andrew was there for that episode as a guest, and he didn't think it was a real name for a game. He just thought that you were saying some dumb phrase as a
some
joke.
Catchphrase every time I mention the game's name.
Right. And because of that, we decided that it was in fact better as a catchphrase than as a game title, and it just stuck.
Well, for those that didn't know, our phrase, our sign-off, is indeed the subtitle of Tactics Ogre.
Yes.
Which is a formative strategy RPG that popularized the isometric turn-based formula that is still used by many JRPGs today.
Well, strategy RPGs, anyway.
Yeah, pardon me, strategy RPGs. Yeah. As far as listener feedback, we had one write-in from Tamachan87 who says, I had somehow completely bypassed Final Fantasy Tactics until I got my RetroPie. It has always fascinated me, and I absolutely adore the art style, but the price was more than a little too much for my tastes. Fair. After my, in air quotes, legal backup was booted up on my Pi, I was hooked. I promised myself I would look into Tactics Ogre once I finished Tactics to give myself that sense of appreciation of where it all came from. I have not finished Tactics. Y-Graph can go chew sand.
Yeah.
Release info, it was developed and published by Quest.
Yep.
Released originally on the Super Famicom in October of 1995 in Japan only. Mm-hmm. It was ported to the Saturn by River Hillsoft, published December 1996, again in Japan only. Yep. And then ported to the PlayStation by Art Dink, of all people.
Yep. They did some okay ports back then.
And published September 1997. It was localized for North America by Atlas and came out in May 1998 and remained unreleased in PAL regions.
Right.
And then it was again remade, but this time an actual remake, not just a port, by Square Enix and released worldwide in late 2010, early 2011. And it was renamed Tactics Ogre: The Wheel of Fate in Japan.
Fortunately, in the rest of the world, they kept the previous subtitle that we never got on the original release.
Yeah. As far as first encounters,
confusing at all.
As far as first encounters, I had always, like Tamachan who wrote in, I had always, I kind of had the opposite experience where I always wanted to play Tactics, Final Fantasy Tactics, and then ended up playing Tactics Ogre. But I specifically played the PSP version because at the time, I was a big 1-Up fan.
Right.
And I had learned that whatever game Jeremy Parrish gave good scores to, I liked.
Yeah.
We just had the same taste in games by happenstance.
I had that same reaction to him for several years there.
And he would always come up with weird crap like Ninja 5.0 on GBA, like just weird stuff. And I'm like, I've not even heard of that.
Right.
And he'd be like, oh, play it, it's great. And I would. And so it got to where anytime he gave something like over an 8, I wouldn't even look anything up. I'd just buy it. I didn't care if I heard about it or not.
Yeah.
In Tactics Ogre, I believe he gave a perfect score to.
Nice.
And so I instantly purchased a physical copy and went and got it on my PS.
Version.
Yeah, PSP version.
Yeah.
I instantly went out and bought a physical copy of the PSP version and played it and loved it, and then continued playing it on my Vita, where I eventually beat it right around the 60 or 70 hour mark, which is a lot for me.
Yeah.
I don't normally play games that long. And I just adored the game.
Nice.
Afterward, I went to try to play Final Fantasy Tactics, and it felt like a dated, clunky mess compared to the PSP version of Tactics Ogre. I could not get into it.
Which version of Tactics did you try to play?
The PS1 version.
Okay, because the PSP version has a lot of those same quality of life upgrades that you'll see on the PSP version of Tactics Ogre. Not as many, though, because if I remember right, it came out before the PSP version of Tactics Ogre.
Now, I will also say I had previously played through Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, but that's also a very different game from Final Fantasy Tactics, to the point that you could kind of say it's more like a Final Fantasy Tactics themed tactic game.
Right.
But I did enjoy that. But yeah, Tactics Ogre became one of my favorite games. I still love it. And I still from time to time boot it up and play a couple rounds and then go, I don't know what any of my stuff does. I forgot it all and turned it off.
That sounds about right. For me, I had heard about it through the internet because I had played Ogre Battle on Super NES, and I rented it on Super NES only because it had an Enix logo on there, and I was like, well, this has got to be good. And I rented it a couple of times and until I eventually bought that rental copy. And then I heard that there was this sequel on Super NES that never came out over here, and so I kept kind of looking at it. And then eventually the PS1 version came out over here, and when I rented that, I was like, well, this is just a Final Fantasy Tactics knockoff. What the fuck is up with this? And so I didn't bother to play it for several years. It was after the turn of the millennium that I finally sat down with the PS1 version of Tactics Ogre and gave it a legit shot, realizing, no, this predates Final Fantasy Tactics. Remember that as you approach it. And then I ended up really enjoying it, and I'm pretty sure...
Which in the original iterations of the game, you do need to remember that. Yes. The PSP version, you do not.
No, not anymore. But I really enjoyed it. It took me a while. I also had to set it down a few times before I finally pushed my way to the end, just because there were a couple of battles that really pissed me off.
Yeah, the PS1 version is also famously grindy. Well, really, all of them but the PSP version are famously grindy. Yeah. So tell me about this new section in our show. Tell me about the etymology of Tactics Ogre.
So I wanted to cover this because this particular game and this particular series has a weird etymology here. So Tactics Ogre, of course, is the sequel to Ogre Battle, March of the Black Queen, which I mentioned a moment ago is a Super NES game. And Ogre Battle and March of the Black Queen are both names of tracks from the album Queen 2 by Queen, the British rock band.
Yeah.
The title Let Us Cling Together comes from the song Teo Toriate, or Let Us Cling Together, also by Queen, from the album A Day at the Races, because the developers at Quest were big Queen fans and felt that rather than coming up with original names, you just steal song titles.
Just
apparently.
Literally, yeah.
Just take them outright. However, as we have previously mentioned on the show, the future Ogre Battle subtitles after this one, which were Persons of Lordly Caliber, Prince of Zenobia, and Knights of Lotus, and Wheel of Fate, none of those appear to be Queen tracks. So they finally learned a little bit of originality after this one.
Persons of Lordly Caliber. That's our new sign-off. We're going to change it now.
I tried that once, and you shot me down.
Yeah, don't do that. No. Tell me about the development here.
All right, so it was developed and written by Yasumi Matsuno, and this was his second ever game after the original Ogre Battle.
And the original Ogre Battle was an RTS, correct?
It was a strategy RPG
hybrid,
but it was real time.
Yeah.
And he has said that the dark political tone of the series was inspired by his outside perspective of the Yugoslav wars of the early 90s, including the Bosnian genocide, which is possibly the darkest sentence that I've ever said on any episode of this show.
It's some dark shit.
Yeah. Additionally, he said that he felt there were too many gods and demons in the original Ogre Battle, and he felt that led to it lacking reality, so he wanted to ground this one a little bit more and make it more...
he grounded it.
Make it a little bit more about the people in their own good or dark side rather than relying on gods and demons. The turn-based nature was chosen because the developers felt that the real-time strategy gameplay of the first Ogre Battle was too foreign for Japanese players.
Which that's fair.
Right. They referenced the Megami Tensei series as inspiration with its order versus chaos system, and they said that led to the branching narrative paths that they found in the game was that inspiration specifically.
Yeah. As far as versions, we're kind of moving this here so that as we talk about the rest of the systems in the game, you can understand how they relate to the different versions of the game.
Right.
The Saturn version is a direct port of the Super Famicom original, but adds voice acting.
Yeah.
It also removes restrictions on the Ogre Blade's ability to swap bodies, and these restrictions were reinstated in all future ports.
Yeah, so this is a weirdo port. Like, It had some extra stuff that never appeared again.
Yeah, namely voice acting.
Yeah.
That's a big ad that never,
Vanished.
PlayStation version was seemingly a direct port of the Super Famicom original, so it gets rid of the Saturn changes and really just has minor changes to the music.
Right.
And that brings us to the PSP version, which is really what our episode is about, because it is a complete remake of the game. It adds the world system that allows players to redo story events and see different results.
Right.
So once you finish the game, you can go back through the world tarot and just jump into the story at any branching moment, whenever you want.
Which is nice.
It also adds camera control, including an overhead view, which is vital for this game. It's very easy for enemies to like hide behind things and you can't see them in the original versions.
I know, because I still haven't finished the PSP version, but I sure as hell dealt with that on the original.
Yeah. Death is less of a problem with restorative items to revive dead teammates, which is a big thing for games like this.
Right.
Health revives between battles when attacking fortresses.
Yes.
So fortresses were they're linked battles. So when you assault a fortress, it'll be 2 or 3 battles in a row, and you can't go to town or recruit or buy any items. And in the original versions, you presumably would have to swap in different guys because you would get low on health on whoever you're using. Now, as a weird side effect of that, the PSP version, you never really, because you always heal after every battle, you never really have a reason to swap in different people. So you do kind of end up with that strategy RPG situation of, well, this is my team of like 12 guys that are leveled up.
Right.
Which we'll talk about the system they put in place to kind of get rid of that a little bit. But you do still kind of end up with it. It introduced crafting, which was kind of a side thing. I know when we say, it's got crafting systems these days, it means something totally different. It means that you have to go out and punch trees and get enough sticks to build a fire to make a, whatever.
Right.
But it was in there.
Yeah.
It wasn't a huge part of the game. And then obviously I had a massive visual overhaul. The game looks great. I was playing on PPSSPP on my computer, upscaled to 10x resolution, and it just looks fantastic.
Nice.
It's a great looking game. Even on the PSP and the Vita was a great looking game. So plot. This is referred to as Chapter 7 of the Ogre Saga, and it's important to note that there were only ever 5 Ogre Battle franchise games, and one is an unnumbered side story.
Right.
So they kind of did the Star Wars thing, but then never went back to finish it.
It's not like they're the only ones that did that, too, because Monolith did the same thing with Xenogears, and then again with Xenosaga.
The player controls Denim Pavel, whose hometown was destroyed. Denim along with his sister, and I've always said Katia.
I'll buy that.
Catiua. I'm sure there is a correct way to pronounce it.
My version didn't have voice acting, so I'll buy that.
Yeah, I've always said Katia forever, which sounds suspiciously like Kesha, but that's how I've said it. And his friend Vice with a Y.
Man, now I want to be able to change their names.
You can.
Can you?
You do. I mean, you gotta. Yeah, the PSP one lets you change their names. You can put. Not everyone. I think, or really just Denim, Kesha, and Vice. I think are the only ones you're able to change their names.
Now she'll be Kesha.
Denim, you can for sure.
Nice.
They lead the Liberation Army in a battle against the Dark Knights.
Yep.
The plot. We're not going to spoil the plot first of all because one, it is really interesting.
Right. But
it's also very lengthy. It's full of twists. And it's honestly kind of confusing to the point that we're not going to do it. If you're interested, play the game. It is a good story if you like kind of grounded, like Game of Thronesy style stories with lots of different factions and intrigue.
Yeah, before when I was trying to write up some notes for this, I was like, let me refresh myself on the story of Tactics Ogre. It's been a few years since I played it, and I'm looking up some like plot synopses, and I'm like, I remember none of this.
I was jumping back to story elements, trying to get to the beginning of different threads as I was playing. And then finally I was like, fuck it, I'll just have to start the whole game over. And I started over, and they open like it's in media res. It's mid-conversation about a faction I've never heard of fighting another faction in this faction. And I'm like, oh, it's just like that.
Dude, this guy loves doing that in his games too, because a bunch of his games do that same shit.
And I will say that it does lend itself to implied world building very well, because a lot of times Because the game is really thematically dark and realistic, and it does that very well. And characters have these weird changing motivations and interesting dialogue, and everything feels very well realized through the dialogue. So even though the game never really explains most of the factions, the dialogue gives this really great context that lets you fill in the gaps. So in your head, you're like, I don't know who the Dark Knights are, or who they're in, where they're from, or whatever. Or anything about the region they're from, but I know we don't like them from the perspective of the Liberation Army. Or you hear about, whatever other faction, you're like, I don't know where they are or anything about them, but I know that we like them or we don't like these people. So it's really good about...
I don't know who they are, but Kesha doesn't seem to like them very much.
The dialogue gives you context enough that... there are some people out there that are like, no, I have to know exactly who they're talking about, or it bothers me. And if you're that kind of person, it'll probably drive you nuts. So,
well, if you're that kind of person, why did you start on Chapter 7 of this 5-part series?
That said, again, it can get a little Game of Thronesy. There's lots of mentions of different countries and their affiliations with each other. So if you just don't have the stomach for political intrigue, it may kind of bore you. But it's also really easy to just skip the dialogue and play the battles. The only thing, if you're skipping dialogue and you have a choice that will give you a branching story path, it'll make you choose. And interestingly enough, the choices really do affect the plot, or at the very least, they kind of seem to really affect the plot.
And there are multiple endings and stuff.
There's many endings. There's lots of branching paths. In my newest playthrough, I was going through, and one of my main party members from when I played on PSP didn't join my party, and I was like, wait, come back. Because apparently, because here's the thing, what I like about the dialogue choices, and for some people this might bother them, and I understand that, but what I like about it is that it's not like, would you like me to join your party? Yes or no. It's these things where it's stuff about what you believe. So it'll say something, you'll have two options that are something that mentions you trying to get revenge on your murdered family, or something that mentions you fighting for peace for, the entire realm. And it's not really clear what the other person wants you to say to get a positive reaction. So it puts you in a situation where you just kind of have to answer honestly from your character's perspective and deal with the consequences. Now, obviously, you can come back to it later once you finish the game. But I like that. I like that it's not putting these really, it doesn't make your choices obvious, because then I lament over them. When it's this thing where it's like, oh, it's just kind of vague dialogue and I don't know what I'm picking either way, I might as well bite the bullet and play the role. That gets me more invested in the characters.
See, I have the opposite problem. If I don't,
I imagine so.
If I don't immediately know what my answer is going to be, I'm immediately looking up strategy guides. I'm like, how do I optimize this character?
Which, granted, it's easy enough to look up, this is your dialogue choices, and it's not too terrible to find.
Not at all.
But let's do gameplay. So this is, again, a strategy RPG. So in between battles, which comprise the majority of the game, you only have a map with location markers. There's no overworld or anything to traverse. Locations are often revisited, and you backtrack a lot. Some locations serve as random battle locations that you can play over and over again for grinding purposes.
Yeah, for anybody who has played Final Fantasy Tactics, it is very, very similar to that.
Battles take place on an isometric grid where you control a group of different units in turn-based combat. Turns are taken in initiative order, as opposed to the player choice initiative system of something like Disgaea. So you'll have, on the PSP version, a big list on the side of who's going when and in what order, which is very convenient. And unit choice and placement, especially before the battle starts, is really important. So you have this pre-battle placement grid of like 3x4 squares that you get. The battle tells you can take X number of people into the battle, and you have to place them on this grid. And then it just puts you on the field, and you don't know what the field looks like when you're choosing your placement. And it becomes really important. Some battles, if you place your guys poorly on this little grid, you screw yourself out of the first 4 turns.
You think that you're putting your characters in a smart method by putting your strong characters up front and your more squishy characters in the back, and then you start the battle and you realize one of those front positions was on the ground and everybody else is on the roof of this building, and so that one dude is just down there on his own.
Yeah. And levels are gained in the original games per unit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the change they made in the PSP version is you now gain levels per class. Just like Final Fantasy, this is a class-based system.
Right.
So if you have 2 knights in the field, they both get 2 shares of experience, and then your knight class levels up. Then you can switch someone else to a knight or recruit someone and make them a knight, and they will have those levels.
Nice.
Which is really nice.
Nice.
What they won't have is skill points.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the crux of the strategy of the game. So units have skills, which are purchased for skill points that accrue just like experience through combat.
Right.
And both skill slots and skills are purchased with the same skill currency.
Yeah.
And the skill system was very fleshed out and improved upon in the PSP version, which gave units many, many, many more skill options. And it made them very customizable in this regard, although not quite as customizable as Final Fantasy Tactics. No. Classes change what overall proficiencies and skills the character has available, and the skill system lets you fully customize each unit. So you can have 2 very different knights on the field at the same time. Finishing moves, magic types, passive bonuses, even throwing and using items is a skill that you purchase with skill points and customize on your character. And the downside to this is that with everything being a skill, specifically things that were not skills in the original version, the PSP version of the game means that many of your characters start with less abilities than they did in the original game.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it's nice to get to customize those abilities, because if they start with an ability that is lame, then you just wouldn't use that character.
Right.
And so I kind of go back and forth on this. I don't mind starting my characters maybe starting a little bit less capable, if it means that I can customize them more later on down the line. And I very much like having everything in this skill system. It's a one-stop shop, like everything to do with my character. I pick their class, and then I just build skills. I can be like, oh, this guy, all he fucking does is hit things with an axe tremendously hard. Every single skill he has is about axes.
His name is Axe Battler, and he uses a sword.
And I enjoy having that kind of unit customization a lot. Usually I'll have, I'll be like, oh, this is my healing knight that just has shields and heals and throwing abilities to throw restorative items. And then this is my axe knight that, again, is very good with axes.
I fall into the habit of anytime that I can customize characters that way, I just inevitably end up recreating the cast of Final Fantasy IV.
Which, that's fine.
Right.
I mean,
it's
you
a
can,
fairly
sure.
balanced, group of people. And it was one of the earliest RPG-like things that I played that had that preset cast. So I find myself constantly making the tank character that still inexplicably has a heal spell.
Yeah.
The dedicated healer that is also a ranged attacker, and then the mage that is completely useless. I just constantly go back to that.
And several of the classes really kind of mirror Final Fantasy stuff, like the Knight. It's like he's a big tanky dude that can also have some heals or whatever.
Right.
But then you have things where, like, mages are just mages. You teach them whatever magic you want. You can go crazy with it, There is a tendency for ranged units to be very powerful. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite abilities that they added is Trajectory. It's one of the and actually I believe it was in the original, but it's a skill called Trajectory, and you give it to your ranged units, and it lets you see where your bolt or your arrow is going to land whenever you fire it.
Yeah.
Without that skill, you can't see where it's going to go. You just have to guess, and you might hit someone else or hit the edge of that building or whatever. And I do remember the first time I played it, I loved that because it was forcing me to, because I didn't have enough skill points, and every skill slot is very valuable to me. And I would go back and forth between removing Trajectory to make them stronger, but then I would miss shit half the time because I wouldn't see what it was going to clip into, so that I would end up having to add it back. Now, these days, I play it much safer. Every ranged unit gets Trajectory, and they can just fuck off until they figure out enough skill points to get the rest of it. But the game is also less grindy in the PSP version. The original version, and this may be apocryphal because I never played it, and you did. Maybe you can speak to it.
Right.
The way to, because your units leveled up, not your classes. Right. So the way to level up units was to go to a battlefield and throw rocks at each other, because every unit has the ability to throw rocks. It does almost no damage. And you'd throw rocks back and forth to build up experience and skill points.
Alternatively, the other way to level up your reserve members is a Game Shark.
Yes, that's also that's also an option.
Yes.
So in that regard, I do think leveling up by class and having everything customizable with skills is a vast improvement. Certainly, there are minor downsides to it, but they're minor. I mean, when you're talking about like, oh, my one unit started off with not enough skills in a 60-hour game, like in the grand scheme, does it really matter?
Right.
As far as units, recruitment can happen both in the story proper for your bigger units that are story-based that may or may not stick around depending on how things go. And you can also recruit in towns, and recruiting all the various units is a huge task in the game. Thankfully, the World Tarot in the PSP version, again, lets you jump to any point and recruit various units back and forth, let various units leave or die, and see what happens. And the game also has a mechanic for recruiting on the field, where you actually go up to a unit, and I don't know if they had this in the original Final Fantasy Tactics. Maybe they did. Maybe they took it from this as well. But you walk up to a unit and you try to recruit them, and your guy talks to them with a certain number of success rate, and they'll just join you mid-battle, and then they're just your unit now.
I want to say that was in Tactics Ogre. I know that there was a job class to do that in the original Final Fantasy Tactics, but I want to say it was in Tactics Ogre as well, if I remember right.
And then you can get the Beastmaster and give him skills that let him recruit different units. Like, that's how I got dragons. I had 2 dragons in my party. That was a big mainstay for me, was my 2 giant dragons.
Wait, you mean you don't just recruit whatever the cutest monster on the screen is all the time?
No, I get the biggest, beefiest dragon I can.
Oh, I bet your monsters are stronger than mine.
Oh, I only have the 2, Saturn.
You have these 2 massive dragons, and somehow I have a Bulbasaur. I don't even know how you got in this game.
I spent a lot of hours getting those dragons. And then there's the Chariot Tarot, which I feel is the biggest improvement in the PSP version. It is exclusive to that version. It allows you to go back up to 50 turns in battle, and more importantly, it maintains branching paths.
Nice.
So if you go back, you branch off from a turn, take a different path, and then go, no, that was worse. You can go back up and go down the other path.
Nice.
Which is so nice.
Oh, yeah.
It entirely removes the need for save scumming. And it very much lends itself to the kind of perfect game mentality that a lot of strategy. Saturn, I know you suffer from this one where you're like, no, I need my strategy game. I need to have a perfect game. No one can die. No one can get KO'd, whatever. And I think that I suffer from it too, specifically in this type of game. I can't stand losing units.
Nope.
And it makes it so that it in the middle of a strategy game, suddenly you're solving this weird puzzle where you're looking for the most optimal route.
Right.
And so it forgives a lot of that really hard original strategy RPG design by making it something that you can kind of cheese, but they've got a system for cheesing it. They expect you to cheese the battle. And interestingly enough, and I tested this hundreds of times, identical actions will keep any random chance associated to them when you go back. So let's say you use the chariot to go back and redo you attacking a guy. So you attack him from behind instead of from in front. It'll give you the same attack result.
Nice. So you don't get a different RNG roll for it just because you
traveled
back.
They keep that roll. And then I do think maybe if you change, like if you're attacking them from behind or a different height, I think that maybe alters it. But if you're just like, oh, I attacked him, I missed, I'm going to go back and attack him again. It doesn't.
Nice.
The game is wise to that.
It's not just going to let you straight up cheat.
If I were to really lodge a complaint against the gameplay, it would be that the magic in the game feels like this very weird mixture of extremely weak and extremely powerful at the same time. So I will have a wizard slinging lightning bolts that do 1 damage for 10 turns in a row. And then all of a sudden he attacks this one guy and it kills him in 1 hit. And I'm like, what? What happened? What statistic am I not understanding that, that said, status effects probably comprise at least 50% of the spells in the game, and they seem to be what the game wants you to do.
Yeah, and I happened to play this during an era where I was explicitly avoiding status effects in games, so I pretty much avoided any kind of magic type characters.
I'm sorry, can we go back? You had a phase where you were avoiding status effects in games?
Yeah, I don't know why. There was just this period in the early 2000s where I decided that status effects were lame and I wasn't going to take part in it.
You must have fought too many Malboros in Final Fantasy.
I'm pretty sure that was it.
Fuck it!
Yeah. This was early 2000s, so this was after all of the PlayStation era Final Fantasy, so I was probably really pissed at Malboros. That had to have been it.
Now the status effects in the game are good. They're interesting. They're fun. There's a lot of real weird ones. I like them, but it just creates this thing where don't expect to be doing a lot of damage with your wizards, except for that one wizard that you have that will do crazy damage all the time, and you don't know why. You're just like, okay, let's name him Merlin. I don't know. Right. He just fucking kills everybody instantly. But I do think gameplay-wise, it is especially the PSP version is one of the more it's one of the better strategy RPGs I've played ever.
Certainly seems more polished. I need to give it more time. I only got a couple hours into it so far, but it definitely feels like they cleaned up a lot of what was there in the first place.
Yeah, as far as different versions of the game, the PSP port is the definitive version. And it both looks and plays great on the Vita, and I think you can still buy it on the shop on the Vita. Yes, some people still have Vitas, and you can buy things on the shop there.
You can still buy digitally for PSP as well. You just have to transfer it through a PC or PS3 to get it to your PSP.
God, I'm angry that you just said that. That like you had nothing to do with that being the reality we live in, but I'm just angry that it exists. As far as Legacy, all versions of the game have been well received. The PSP port received the most positive attention. Franchise sales are around 900,000 worldwide, which is pretty good for a little JRPG.
Yeah, for a game from a company that most people haven't even heard of.
Yeah. And then Saturn, I'm going to let you go through the rest of the franchise here.
So the developer, Yasumi Matsuno, as well as artists Hiroshi Minagawa and Akihiko Yoshida, and composer Hitoshi Sakimoto, and other composer Masaharu Iwata. They all left Quest following the release of Tactics Ogre, and they almost all immediately joined Square or started getting contracted by Square to develop Final Fantasy Tactics. Yeah. So that was their immediate next project after Tactics Ogre, which you can tell it is.
Oh, and I will say, I'm just going to completely interrupt you because I don't want to forget. The soundtrack is absolutely stellar.
Fucking amazing.
It is a great soundtrack.
I would say the same thing for Final Fantasy Tactics as well. Those composers are just wonderful. Publisher Quest would go on to make 2 more Ogre Battle games, one on N64, one on Neo Geo Pocket Color, and then one more Tactics Ogre game, which was the Knights of Lotus on Game Boy Advance. And that was their last game before they also were purchased by Square. So Square kept it as a separate company for a little bit, but then they eventually just dissolved the company in 2003 during their merger with Enix. So now it's just another part of Square Enix. Matsuno stated that his goal with the Ogre Battle Tactics Ogre franchise was to make a series of interconnected games in a shared world that didn't all have the exact same gameplay style. And he later tried that again with the Ivalice games, which was Final Fantasy Tactics and Vagrant Story and Final Fantasy 12, which it's true, they did not all have the same gameplay style. And
true. Didn't they also make a Tactics version of Final Fantasy 12 on DS?
Revenant Wings or something?
Yes.
Yes. That was.
I wonder if that's any good.
Also part of the Ivalice series that he was working on. Yeah. He did leave Square in 2005, but he did come back to work on the 2010 remake on PSP. he came back as a contractor for that one last thing, just because the other members of the Tactics Ogre team apparently requested that he come back, and he did. So that was good. Yeah. I think I read that. I have already forgotten where I read it. Said he was working. I think he has some independent company that he works on now, and I did not recognize a single one of the games he had created with that independent company.
As far as final thoughts and recommendations, I would say if you like tactics games, and now that I've written that and I'm thinking about, I didn't like tactics games before this game. So even if you don't like tactics games, the PSP port of Tactics Ogre is just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's got a very deep story. It has legitimately interesting characters and legitimately good writing.
Oh, yeah.
There are a lot of really heart-wrenching moments in the game if you're into stories that have a lot of bad shit happening to people.
Yeah.
And it just has a boatload of quality of life improvements that actually will ruin you for other strategy games.
Yeah.
Legitimately, anytime I play another strategy game and there's not an easy way to take back a turn or rewind, I'm like, fuck this. This is some... Because the thing is, a lot of strategy games, even after you move a character, they won't let you take that back. Yeah. And I'm like, I was just moving to see if I was in range of this guy. And they're like, well, what you should have done is highlighted your character, selected their ranged attack, and then calculated the squares, accounting for your movement. Like, no, fuck you, strategy games. Do it like Tactics Ogre.
Yeah, the first strategy RPG that I actually gave a legit chance to was this game called Vandal Hearts on the PS1. Which
I'm aware of it.
It's basically baby's first strategy RPG because it does let you take back all of that until the action is committed. And so going from that into Final Fantasy Tactics and then Tactics Ogre, I was like, why are these so much harder? Why do they?
And I've since Tactics Ogre become a big fan of the Disgaea series, which also lets you like set your whole turn up and then back all the way out of whatever action you're taking. The Tactics Ogre on PSP is just a stellar game.
Oh yeah,
absolutely fantastic. Definitely deserves the score Jeremy Parrish gave it. And still holds up very, very well if you like tactics games. I would say more than most older strategy RPGs.
For being a Super NES game ported up to the modern era, it holds its age well. I would also say that if you were just looking for a very callous, dark, gritty story in a RPG series, the whole Ogre Battle series is pretty good.
Oh yeah,
like all of them are pretty solid. Even the GBA Tactics Ogre game is still pretty fun and dark. It doesn't have the kind of quality of life improvements that the PSP remake of the original does, but any of those games are worth checking out if you haven't yet.
For sure. So in short, go play it.
Yeah.
There's a reason we were talking about it 5 years ago. It's because it's good.
Yeah.
Anyway, do stay tuned after the ending theme. We're going to have our producer Guy on the show. And if you would like to support the show like our producer Guy does, then you can do so at patreon.com/Retro Warriors, where you can get our spinoff show Talking Wizards, where we mostly talk about, Frosted Flakes with Lucky Charms. But it's interesting, I swear. No, I swear it is. It is. It really is. We have like 4 episodes where we talk about Frosted Flakes Lucky Charms now. It's become a thing.
Yeah.
You can also get after hours or early uncut versions of this show where we read weird bootleg NES game titles for 15 minutes.
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
It's a good time, and we would love to have your support. Or you can go rate, review us on your podcast aggregator of choice.
Mostly iTunes.
With a 5-star? I mean, it's up to you. You pick how many stars.
You tell us how many we earned.
Yeah, you
I hope it's at least 2.
I would hope for at least 3 or 4. Okay. But, just any stars. Because honestly, even if you're just review bombing us, it's still activity.
Yay.
Please don't review bomb us. Please don't.
Please, we are not The Last of Us 2. We can't afford it.
Anyway, again, stay tuned after the end theme. We got Guy on.
Yay.
That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. And as always, let us cling together. welcome to the after party with our producer Guy. He's here.
Yay! Hi.
He made it. Hi, Guy.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I too am well, sir. I don't know.
Why are we talking like this? What is happening?
I don't know. I said, "How are you?" and you made it awkward.
I believe that would happen. Yeah.
How have you? What's going on? What's going on over in Guyland, which is the name of your house now?
I have 2 jump ropes in my house.
See, Saturn, it's not weird.
Did you steal them from an elementary school?
No, I ordered them on Amazon.
When you're a grown-up, you call them speed ropes.
This is
Is that
true.
what it
There you
is?
go.
It took me a long time to figure out what a speed rope was.
They're fucking great cardio, and you do it like you do it in place, you
Right.
know. So you can like watch TV while you do it.
Yeah.
Well, at least I thought I could watch TV when I do it. It's like really hard cardio, and so I try to watch TV, but then I'm just like dying. Jump rope is really hard, especially when you're very tall and fat and out of shape.
It's fair. I understand all these
But
things.
if you keep jump roping, you'll not be like 2 of those.
That's true.
Yeah, you'll be less tall if you keep jump roping.
I mean,
There you go.
that's possible depending on your age.
I was reading a thing that was like, it said, because I bought it and I was like, how long should I jump rope? Because I know it's harder to do than running because you can't really, like you can go faster, but the minimum speed, you have like a higher minimum speed
Right.
than when you're just like walking or jogging because you got to at least be moving the rope.
Right.
And so like the minimum is higher than I wanted the minimum to be. You know, and I looked it up and it was like 10 minutes of speed roping is the equivalent of 30 minutes of like jogging. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds 3 times as hard, and it is.
Yeah,
It
at like an
definitely is.
8-minute mile pace too. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I do like 10 minutes of that off and on, and I feel like I'm going to die.
Yeah.
It's rough stuff. Saturn, you should get you a jump rope.
I've already got jump rope in Final Fantasy IX and in Mario Odyssey. I figure that's enough, right?
Hey, Final Fantasy VII Remake has pull-ups.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Didn't it have squats in the original?
Yeah, it
Did
was
they get rid
squats.
of the squats?
No, it has squats and pull-ups.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Oh, this is that new expanded content Square Enix was talking about.
Right. The gym has expanded a little
This
bit.
is-
I'm glad they've really branched out.
I don't know.
Of all the shit that they added to that game, that was not on my list of stuff I wanted to see put in there. But okay.
It's fine. If you want to see how it works, one of my videos is just an hour of trying to get the fucking pull-up trophy.
Oh my god.
How many do you have to do to get the trophy?
Like 40?
Oh.
That doesn't seem bad.
Yeah, okay, you do it. You see what happens.
No, I've sworn off pull-ups ever since I smashed myself in the face with that pull-up bar a couple weeks ago. Which I don't think we've even talked about on the show. My nose was like ruined for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, he keeps showing me his ruined nose in like close-up webcam every Wednesday.
Yeah, it's when we have our check out Justin's ruined nose meeting.
Yeah. Well,
Saturn, you're not invited,
I
but
would hope not.
Guy is.
Invited.
Guy, what do you?
I don't think invited is the right word necessarily. But okay.
You're contractually obligated to be there.
I'm contractually obligated to do shit.
Guy, what do you got for us this month?
We have some Cinema Rogues updates, I suppose.
Oh, yeah?
Oh yeah. I forgot to post that today. I'm so bad about posting.
Oh
that.
yeah, there's that too. But also,
I'm sorry.
No.
It'll be up. If you want to listen to Cinema Rogues, our movie podcast starring Guy and Andrew, you can go to there's a link in the show description, so go click on that. It's free. It's on our Patreon, but you don't have to be a patron to listen to it. It's free.
Yeah, thanks for
that.
the plug. But
You're welcome.
yeah, so changes, lineup changes, like you mentioned. It's me and Andrew now. It's not me and Andrew and Pablo, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
It is, but Pablo has decided to work on his own YouTube channel and doesn't have the time to commit to it, and that's...
Now, has he launched anything on YouTube yet, or is it all still forthcoming?
It's all still forthcoming. He's working on it. He's working on to figure out exactly what content he wants to go.
That's fair.
And it seems like a fun project for him.
Jump rope content.
Yeah, that's it.
Rope content.
I think he was talking about adventure games.
He does really love like point and click adventure games, and it's gotten to a point where I just kind of had to be like, we're not gonna cover many of them because we don't like them. So he should definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that should be
It's
fun
a very
for him.
passionate group.
And we wish him the best. It's just
Absolutely.
Part of why I enjoyed Cinema Rose was doing a show with my brother. Right.
Now you're stuck with Andrew.
Now I'm stuck with Andrew. Yeah. We just recorded our first episode that's just us, and I got that one edited and ready to go. Oh, that's the other thing. I'm taking over the editing for Cinema Rogues.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So if you notice some editing differences, I'm sorry, I'm not Pablo.
Then please come to our Discord, also in the show description, and yell at Guy.
Yeah.
All caps. Just
remind him how he'll never be Pablo.
Yeah, specifically that.
Yeah, no matter how long I live, I'll never be my younger brother.
You'll never be as good.
He's got big shoes to fill.
But mostly because he's got big feet.
I'm just thinking of The Simpsons now, so that's fine.
Well, that's good. I mean, at least we're still doing it, and it's it seems to be getting good response. I like the show.
Good, thanks.
I usually end up listening. Usually, you guys post your tracks, and before it's even edited, I go and listen to like one of your tracks, but I don't bother to put them together.
Well,
so I listen to them in like this weird trilogy format.
Well, I had a similar experience because I cut together an episode.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because y'all had one where Pablo's audio track got lost, and so you somehow salvaged.
Oh man.
A show where a whole third person was missing.
Yeah. So that was going through 2.5 hours of content and trimming it down to about 2 hours of content.
Dang.
Oh man.
It was one of those things where if I could make a response that Andrew or I had to Pablo make sense by cutting out the part where we go, yeah, man, well, then great if it flowed with the conversation. But there were some really funny bits that ended up on the cutting room floor too.
You didn't consider just like jumping in and dubbing in yourself, making the joke that Pablo would have made?
That's called stealing jokes, and that's what got Dane Cook in hot water. So I'm just saying.
No,
also, being a terrible comedian got Dane Cook in hot water.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
That'll never get me in trouble. But I mean, if I tried to do that, then I'd use my whenever I complain about Pablo voice, like, yeah, did you notice how fucking?
I didn't know there was a dedicated voice for that. I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, I don't complain about him that much.
That's fair.
It is a bummer because I believe that was the only public-facing content that we do that Pablo was on, because he's on After Hours most of the time. But that was his only his final public-facing role where people could where everyone got to hear him.
Yeah,
because everyone, even non-patrons, like they hear Andrew on his show that he and I do, Board Game Barbarians, and Guy, they hear you on our show during your segment every month. But yeah, now Pablo is now a patron exclusive. Specifically him, in his entirety, is now a patron exclusive.
I'm just imagining Pablo dubbing himself into the middle of this conversation, like, "Well, I don't need you guys anyway."
Great.
Like he's only represented publicly to non-patrons by his edits he adds to the show,
which is great.
Although he did. I didn't notice this because I should listen to the whole show in its entirety before I post it, but I usually, if I'm being honest, I don't. I skim through. I trust him. He puts out great audio, and so I'll sit there and listen to like 20 non-consecutive minutes of each show before I post it, just to make sure there's nothing that was missed or whatever, or audio levels. And someone brought up in the Discord that in the episode where we mentioned Denver the Last Dinosaur, he edited in the Denver the Last Dinosaur theme song. Because I asked him to. I didn't remember asking him to. I feel bad because I always ask him to edit stuff and I don't remember it, but he finds it anyway, like a bloodhound. He tracks it down and edits in weird shit that I'm usually unaware of. Then people in the Discord are like, that edit was great. And then I'm trying to scour the episode like, oh my God, what was it?
I have to imagine every time one of us says, hey, Pablo, edit blah, blah, blah. And like as he's listening to the show for quality feedback, he hears that and he's just like, and then he just like goes to the internet and finds whatever asinine bullshit we just asked for.
I think my two favorite Pablo edits are the one where he edited in clapping.
Yeah. My favorite is when I went, I said, Pablo, make that sound spooky because it's a Halloween episode, and he just edited in like lightning and bat noises behind whatever I said.
Oh man, he's great. I love it.
There's also one where he edited in like 30 solid seconds of an elephant crashing through a ceiling for a Talking Wizards bit.
Yeah, that was my other favorite one. That's the one.
Nice.
I don't know where he even got the audio for that. Where did it come from?
When you're a professional gaffer, that stuff's just on hand.
It's better than being designated the professional fluffer. God damn it.
Right.
All right then.
Our Discord patrons are weird, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe they gave you that title.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm aware.
I didn't. I should have corrected them and said, no, he actually already has a title and he's our producer. But I didn't. I just let him have it.
Just let that roll.
It's fine.
let 'em have that
It's my organic role.
You know, it's how people can be like president and CEO of a company.
Right.
It's like one of those dual roles.
Producer and professional fluffer.
Well, that's good that Cinema Rogues is going to keep going. I like the show, and I like that we have something that's not video games.
Right.
You know, although I say that Talking Wizards isn't video games,
That's true.
But it's also not anything else either. So I don't know.
Also, I believe that Cinema Rogues is our only officially affiliated show that neither of us are on, which is nice.
True, yeah. And I'm excited to have content coming out of our little like imaginary factory that we don't actually even do anything. Like I post it, but that's just because I'm the one with the Patreon login.
Right.
Like that's the only reason that I even have anything to do with it.
Right.
So it's nice to get voices that aren't mine on something. Because I have this habit of like talking a lot. I don't know if y'all noticed I talk a lot.
You do talk a lot. Well, that's what I was afraid of with Cinema Rogues was that it's just going to be two people who don't talk a lot trying to talk.
And Andrew's gotten really good about it. And like back when Andrew and I started podcasting a whole fucking decade ago, it took him a while to get around to like, talking. Yeah,
I remember the few times really, really early on back in the old podcast days, there was maybe one or two, maybe three times that for some reason you couldn't record in a week and we decided to go on without you. And those were always the most awkward shows because we would start out and it would inevitably be like, Andrew, you should do the intro. And he would be like, why me? And then he would do it. And then he would like stop and be like, no, I didn't like that. And then he would redo it.
Yeah.
And we were like, no, it's fine. It's fine, Andrew. We can go. It's okay.
He does, and he's a great host now. He hosts Board Game Barbarians very well. It's a very good show.
Right.
But it's a weird. I'm just gonna sound like I'm bragging, but it is a skill set.
He's found that groove because I think he's excellent at it now.
Yeah, and it's weird to also. Like, as soon as I started talking here and you're like, what do you got? I'm about to start, like, fucking hosting this segment. And I'm like, no, that's not my chair.
I mean, you can. You definitely can. It's your segment.
No, I don't particularly want to.
You
I
pay
enjoy the
for
way
it.
You host and push, push from topic to topic or whatever. Like, you're in charge of timing for your own show.
Right.
I guess, technically. Speaking of timing, we are out of it.
What?
But, Guy, thanks for producing thanks for all the money.
You're welcome.
Producing the show and being on it. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's great.
I'm happy to. It's fun. I enjoy it.
So we're glad to have you, and go listen to Cinema Rogues. It's in the thing. If you're a patron, it's already in your feed. Right. Just go open the app you're already listening to actively in this moment. Open it and go listen to Cinema Rogues. I mean, finish this first, but then go listen to Cinema Rogues. Anyway, thanks for listening, Guy. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see you next time.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.